Not too dark. A little more light. Oh, that's better. Yes, a little more. Just a little more light. A little dim. Oh, there. I can see myself. Hi! What is it? Is it 2:15? Yes. It's 2. Hi! It's time. Yes, I'm here. I did. I said I'd be late, and I said what time I would show up, and now I have shown up. That's very nice. I have the bonnet. What do I have now? So the purple shorts. So we're gonna go look at this. It is like little tiny dark purple flowers. It's awesome. Tra la 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 la. Hello from Chicago. Hello everybody. Hello. Everybody's there. Oh, good, no grass there. Yay. Yes. So I'm running around like, as Ma would say, a chicken with its head cut off, getting ready for the show on Saturday and the technological challenges, because it's like internet, like I figured out how to do this, woohoo! So I should be able to figure out how to do the next thing. Just I gotta tell you, this sarsaparilla candy is awesome, and the Christmas candy that I got, this stuff is great. It's great. Oh, it's like minty and everything. I'm so happy. Okay. What day is it? Is it a special weird day today? I don't know. May. It's still May. So, yeah, it was Hoagie Day. It was Cinco de Mayo. I made fajitas and tacos and things. Today's the 6th. It's National Nurses Day. So I said National Nurses Day. So party on nurses. Beverage Day. It's just orange juice. Crepe Suzette. Bike to school day. nobody's biking to school because everybody's home. School nurse day and skilled trades. Oh, are you in a skilled trade? Skilled trade person's day. That's a good thing. All right, I have book. So we are now starting. It's going to get depressing again. It just is. Things got better, right? Things were getting really sad. The grasshoppers ate everything. The cattle were starving. They had no water. Everything was kind of horrible. But things picked up. That they got a letter from Pa, and he was okay. And he sent money. He sent a lot of money. And he was buying new boots. And it was like, yay! Woo! And then it rained. And the cattle stopped starving and being dehydrated. And they were able to drink water and get milk. And it looks like they'll have food. So things are improving, which means something terrible is going to happen because it's Little House in the Prairie. And just when things are looking up for poor Laura and the gang, something cataclysmically awful must take place. Now, I guess they can't have an earthquake because they're in whatever. But the next chapter is delightfully called "The Darkest Hour is Just Before Dawn." I hope this isn't going to be too depressing. You're reading these books, oh, this will be fun. And then it's like, and then everyone died. It's hard. It's hard because the crops and the cows. So hopefully no more drought. They'll be okay here. Is everyone's internet messing up? Probably everyone's internet is messing up. It's just like everyone is on the internet at the same time. So it's like smoke is coming out of everyone's computer. Mine's working. I am broadcasting. We'll hope that this works out. Now, the winds blew cooler, and the sun was not so hot at noon. Okay, that's good. Mornings were chilly, and the grasshoppers hopped feebly until the sunshine warmed them. One morning, a thick frost covered the ground. It coated every twig and chip with a white fuzz, and it burned Laura's bare feet. She saw millions of grasshoppers sitting perfectly still. That's what she saw. In a few days, there was not one grasshopper left anywhere. So a frost came, which was great. Normally frost like, oh, bad. Frost came, and the grasshoppers, the locusts that were all still there, went, frozen grasshoppers. So, yay, dead. In a few days, not one grasshopper left anywhere. Winter was near, and Pa had not come. It's a really long time now. The wind was sharp. It did not whiz anymore. It shrieked and wailed. The sky was gray, and a cold gray rain fell. The rain turned to snow, and still Pa did not come. Laura had to wear shoes when she went outdoors. They hurt her feet. She did not know why. The shoes had never hurt her feet before. Mary's shoes hurt Mary's feet, too. Their feet are growing. They're becoming big girls, and their feet are growing. All the wood that Pa had chopped was gone, and Mary and Laura picked up the scattered chips. The cold bit their noses and the fingers while they pried the last chips from the frozen ground. Wrapped in shawls, they went searching under the willows, picking up the little dead branches that made a poor fire. So now they're freezing to death because they've run out of wood that Pa chopped. And so now that's happening, which is bad. And their feet are too big for their shoes, and they're going to have to go shopping, which they can't do. Then one afternoon, Mrs. Nelson came visiting, and she brought her baby Anna with her. Okay, this should be good. Mrs. Nelson was plump and pretty. Her hair was as golden as Mary's, her eyes were blue, and when she laughed, as she often did, she showed rows of very white teeth. Laura liked Mrs. Nelson, but she was not glad to see Anna. Anna was a little larger than Carrie, but she could not understand a word that Laura or Mary said, and they could not understand her. She talked Norwegian. It was no fun to play with her, and in the summertime, Mary and Laura ran down to the creek when Mrs. Nelson and Anna came. But now it was cold. They must stay in the warm house and play with Anna. Ma said so. Okay, so they were like ditching the Norwegian baby just because she spoke Norwegian. Okay, come on, girls, really. Now, girls, Ma said, go get your dolls and play nicely with Anna. Laura brought the box of paper dolls that Ma had cut out of wrapping paper, and they sat down to play on the floor by the open oven door. Anna laughed when she saw the paper dolls. She grabbed into the box, took out a paper lady, and tore her in two. Destructive little child. Laura and Mary were horrified. Carrie stared with round eyes. Ma and Mrs. Nelson went on talking and did not see Anna waving the halves of the paper lady and laughing. Laura put the cover on the paper doll box but in a little while Anna was tired of the torn paper lady and wanted another. Laura did not know what to do, and neither did Mary. Well, they should have let her just play with Carrie. I mean, they're at least in the same age group, kind of like blocks or something. This gets too little. If Anna did not get what she wanted, she bawled. She was little, and she was company, and they must not make her cry. But if she got the paper doll, she would tear them all up. Then Mary whispered, get Charlotte. She can't hurt Charlotte. Laura scurried up the ladder while Mary kept Anna quiet. Darling Charlotte lay in her box under the eaves, smiling with her red yarn mouth and her shoe-button eyes. Laura lifted her carefully and smoothed her wavy black yarn hair in her skirts. Charlotte had no feet, and her hands were only stitched on the flat ends of her arms because she was a rag doll, but Laura loved her dearly. Charlotte had been Laura's very own since Christmas morning long ago in the big woods of Wisconsin. Laura carried her down the ladder, and Anna shouted for her. Laura put Charlotte carefully in Anna's arms. Anna hugged her tight. But hugging could not hurt Charlotte. Laura watched anxiously while Anna tugged at Charlotte's shoe-button eyes and pulled her wavy yarn hair, and even banged her against the floor. There's something wrong with this little Norwegian girl. I think she should be sent to the school counselor. Something's not right here. But Anna could not really hurt Charlotte, and Laura meant to straighten her skirts and her hair when Anna went away. At last the long visit was ended. Mrs. Nelson was going home and taking Anna. Then a terrible thing happened. Anna would not give up Charlotte. Perhaps she thought Charlotte was hers. Maybe she told her mother that Laura had given her Charlotte. Mrs. Nelson smiled. Laura tried to take Charlotte, and Anna howled. I want my doll, Laura said. But Anna hung on to Charlotte, and she kicked and bawled. Oh, for shame, Laura, Ma said. Anna's little, and she's company. You're too big to play with dolls anyway. Let Anna have her. Laura had to mind Ma. She stood at the window and saw Anna skipping down the knoll, swinging Charlotte by one arm. For shame, Laura, Ma said again. A great girl like you, sulking about a rag doll. Stop it this minute. You don't want that doll. You hardly ever played with it. You must not be so selfish. Laura quietly climbed the ladder and sat down on her box by the window. She did not cry, but she felt crying inside her because Charlotte was gone. Pa was not there, but Charlotte's box was empty. The wind went howling by the eaves. Everything was empty and cold. I'm sorry, Laura, Ma said that night. I wouldn't have given your doll away if I'd known you care so much. But we must not think only of ourselves. Think of how happy you've made Anna. Next morning, Mr. Nelson came driving up with a load of Pa's wood that he had cut. He worked all day chopping wood for Ma, and the woodpile was big again. Oh, good. At least they're not going to all freeze to death yet. "Ah, you see how good Mr. Nelson is to us," said Ma. "The Nelsons are real good neighbors. Now, aren't you glad you gave Anna your doll?" "No, Ma," said Laura. Her heart was crying all the time for Pa and for Charlotte. Cold rains fell again and froze. No more letters came from Pa. Ma thought he must have started to come home. In the night, Laura listened to the wind and wondered where Pa was. Often in the morning the woodpile was full of driven snow, and still Pa did not come. Every Saturday afternoon, Laura put on her stockings and shoes, wrapped herself in Ma's big shawl, and went to the Nelsons. She knocked and asked if Mr. Nelson had got a letter for Ma. She would not go in. She did not want to see Charlotte there. Mrs. Nelson said that no letter had come, and Laura thanked her and went home. And this is every Saturday. This is going on for weeks and weeks. What did he leave? In spring? It was spring? Early summer when the locusts came? It's winter. It's been gone for months. Months. It's terrifying. Scary, scary, scary. One stormy day, she caught sight of something in the Nelsons' barnyard. She stood still and looked. It was Charlotte, drowned and frozen in a puddle. Anna had thrown Charlotte away. That's pretty cold. Laura could hardly go to the door. She could hardly speak to Mrs. Nelson. Mrs. Nelson said the weather was so bad that Mr. Nelson had not gone to town, but he would surely go next week. Laura said, "Thank you, ma'am," and turned away. Sleety rain was beating down on Charlotte. Anna had scalped her. Charlotte's beautiful wavy hair was ripped loose, and her smiling yarn mouth was torn and bleeding red on her cheek. One shoe button eye was gone, but she was Charlotte. It was like she was attacked by a doll serial killer. This is horrible. And here's poor Laura finding her doll beaten all up and in the water, frozen, and her hair torn off. It's awful, awful. Laura snatched her up and hid her under the shawl. She ran, panting against the angry wind and the sleet, all the way home. Ma started up, frightened, when she saw Laura. "What is it? What is it? Tell me," Ma said. "Mr. Nelson didn't go to town," Laura answered. "But, oh, Ma, look." "What on earth?" said Ma. "It's Charlotte," Laura said. I stole her. I don't care, Ma. I don't care if I did." "Oh, there. Don't be so excited," said Ma. "Come here and tell me all about it." And she drew Laura down on her lap in the rocking chair. They decided that it had not been wrong for Laura to take back Charlotte. I think not. I mean, really, people. It had been a terrible experience for Charlotte, but Laura had rescued her, and Ma promised to make her as good as new. Ma ripped off her torn hair and the bits of her mouth, and her remaining eye, and her face. They thawed Charlotte and wrung her out, poor doll. And Ma washed her thoroughly clean and starched and ironed her, while Laura chose from the scrap bag a new, pale pink face for her and new button eyes. The doll got a facelift. That night when Laura went to bed, she had Charlotte in her box. Charlotte was clean and crisp. Her red mouth smiled, her eyes shone black, and she had golden brown yarn hair braided into wee braids and tied with blue yarn bows. Laura went to sleep, cuddled against Mary under the patchwork comforters. The wind was howling and sleety rain beat on the roof. It was so cold that Laura and Mary pulled the comforters over their heads. A terrific crash woke them. They were scared in the dark under the comforters. Then they heard a loud voice downstairs. It said, "I declare, I dropped that armful of wood, didn't I?" Ma was laughing. "You did that on purpose, Charles, to wake up the girls." Laura flew screaming out of bed and screaming down the ladder. She jumped into Pa's arms, and so did Mary. Then, with a racket of talking, laughing, jumping up and down. Pa's blue eyes twinkled. His hair stood straight up. He was wearing new whole boots. He had walked 200 miles from eastern Minnesota. He had walked from town in the night in a storm. Now he was here. Now wait, didn't he walk 300 miles to get there? And only 200 back. I'm a little suspicious of Laura's math. We know she's fudged some details here, but now I'm getting confused. He was here. "For shame, girls, in your nightgowns," said Ma. "Go dress yourselves. Breakfast is almost ready." They dressed faster than ever before. They tumbled down the ladder and hugged Pa, and washed their hands and faces and hugged Pa, and smoothed their hair and hugged him. Jack waggled in circles, and Carrie pounded the table with her spoon and sang, "Pa's come home! Pa's come home!" Oh, Carrie used 3 words, a sentence. Carrie is forming sentences. Oh, my God. At last, they were all at the table. Pa said he had been too busy toward the last to write. He said, "They kept us humping on that thresher from before dawn till after dark. And when I could start home, I didn't stop to write. I didn't bring any presents either, but I've got money to buy them." "The best present you could bring us, Charles, was coming home," Ma told him. Well, that's true. After breakfast, Pa went to see the stock. They all went with him, and Jack stayed close at his heels. Pa was pleased that Sam and David and Spot looked so well. He said he couldn't have taken better care of everything himself. Ma told him that Mary and Laura had been a great help to her. Indeed. Oh, yeah, I would walk 500 miles, because if you walk 300, 200, 500 more. Oh, my gosh, Pa said, it's good to be home. Then he asked, "What's the matter with your feet, Laura?" She'd forgotten her feet. She'd forgotten her feet. That's what it says. Oh, she could walk without limping when she remembered to. She said, "My shoe hurts, Pa." She was like hiding the fact that she was limping from her feet hurting that badly because of her shoes. Honestly, girl. Poor little thing. Well, in the house, Pa sat down, took Carrie on his lap, and he reached down and felt of Laura's shoes. "Ow, my toes are tight," Laura exclaimed. "I should say they are," said Pa. "Your feet have grown since last winter. How are yours, Mary?" Mary said her toes were tight, too. "Take off your shoes, Mary," said Pa, "and Laura, you put them on." Mary's shoes did not pinch Laura's feet. They were good shoes, without one rip or hole in them. "They will look almost like new when I have greased them well," said Pa. "Mary must have new shoes. Laura can wear Mary's, and Laura's shoes can wait for Carrie to grow into them." "It won't take her long. Now, what else is lacking, Carolyn? Think what we need, and we'll get what we can of it. Just as soon as I can hitch up, we're all going to town." Yay. Going to town. Okay, good. So something not depressing. Yay. How they hurried and scurried then. They dressed in their winter best, bundled up in coats and shawls, and climbed into the wagon. The sun shone bright, and the frosty air nipped their noses. Sleet sparkled on the frozen hard ground. Pa was on the wagon seat, with Ma and Carrie snug beside him. Laura and Mary wrapped their shawls around each other and snuggled together on their blanket in the bottom of the wagon. Jack sat on the doorstep and watched them go. He knew they would come back soon. Even Sam and David seemed to know that everything was all right. Sam and Dave. Now that Pa was home again, they trotted gaily till Pa said, "Whoa!" and hitched them to the hitching post in front of Mr. Fitch's store. Oh, we didn't go to the Olesons, did we? Went to Mr. Fitch. Didn't go bothering Mr. Oleson. Interesting. First, Pa paid Mr. Fitch part of the money he owed Mr. Fitch for the boards that built the house. Okay, so now they're not totally in debt. They still owe, but not like all of it, thank heavens. Then he paid for the flour and the sugar that Mr. Nelson had brought to Ma while Pa was gone. Next, Pa counted the money was left, and he and Ma bought Mary's shoes. The shoes were so new and shining on Mary's feet that Laura felt it was not fair that Mary was the oldest. Mary's old shoes would always fit Laura, and Laura would never have new shoes. Then Ma said, "Now, a dress for Laura." Laura hurried to Ma at the counter. Mr. Fitch was taking down bolts of beautiful woolen cloth. The winter before, Ma had let out every tuck and seam in Laura's winter dress. This winter, it was very short, and there were holes in the sleeves, where Laura's elbows had gone through them because they were so tight. Pointy little elbows! She wore out her little elbows in her dress. That's terrible. Ma had patched them neatly, and the patches did not show, but in that dress Laura felt skimpy and patched. Still, she had not dreamed of a whole new dress. "What do you think of this golden brown flannel, Laura?" Ma asked. Laura could not speak. Mr. Fitch said, "I guarantee it will wear well." Ma laid some narrow red braid across the golden brown, saying, I think 3 rows of this braid around the neckband and the cuffs and the waistband. What do you think, Laura? Would that be pretty? Oh, yes, Ma, Laura said. She looked up, and her eyes and Pa's bright blue eyes danced together. Get it, Caroline, said Pa. Mr. Fitch measured off the beautiful golden brown flannel and the red braid. Now, you notice, there's a couple of things here. So remember in the show, they went to the Olesons, and Ma was picking out nice cloth, for a dress for the girls. And Mrs. Oleson was like, well, or country folk have to think practical. And was like, you need this burlap, horrible over here, awful cloth. Well, that didn't really happen in the book. So they went to Mr. Fitch, and Mr. Fitch goes, oh yeah, that will wear well. But he's not giving her grief, and she's picking a nice. So that sort of got merged into a thing with the Olsen store, because then they go to the Olsons after, and so it became one thing for the show. There's no Mr. Fitch, but so it's like pieces of things that were in the books all kind of got woven together. So she's going to get her whole new dress. So that's like amazing, and the sort of the brown with the red braid. She had a dress kind of like that. So this is very good, very good. Then Mary must have a new dress, but she did not like anything there. So they all crossed the street to the Olsons, to Mr. Olson's store. There they found dark blue flannel and narrow gilt braid, which was just what Mary wanted. Mary and Laura were admiring it while Mr. Olson measured when Nellie Olson came in. She was wearing a little fur shoulder cape. Of course I was. Hello, she said, and she sniffed at the blue flannel. She said it was all right for country folks. Then she turned to show off her fur and said, see what I got? They looked at it, and Nellie asked, don't you wish you had a fur cape, Laura? But your pa couldn't buy you one. Your pa's not a storekeeper. Laura dared not slap Nellie. She was so angry that she could not speak. She did turn her back, and Nellie went away laughing. That was fun. I enjoyed that. Thank you. Ma was buying warm cloth to make a cloak for Carrie. Pa was buying navy beans and flour and cornmeal and salt and sugar and tea. Then he must get the kerosene can filled and stop at the post office. It was afternoon and growing colder before they left town, so Pa hurried Sam and David, and they trotted swiftly all the way home. Now, see, Mrs. Olson doesn't show up and tell her not to get stuff and make fun of her, but they merged all of this. So Mr. Fitch did make a comment about it wearing well, and that wound up coming out of Mrs. Olson's mouth. And I said, oh, you shouldn't be getting, yeah, well, your pa's not a storekeeper, and you're country folk. Yeah, that's what you need, the flag, fur cape. So they took all that stuff that Nellie said in the fur cape and the stuff that Mr. Fitch said and created this whole moment for Mrs. Olson, who, you notice, she's not even, mentioned. I presumably she exists, but they didn't even mention Mrs. Olson. And as we know, when they went shopping for the time that Caroline was getting a new dress, it was all about her and Mrs. Olson and her making fun of her purchases. So that was totally created for the show. That just did not even happen. Terrible. So I got to be the evil one, not Mrs. Olson. After the dinner dishes were washed and put away, Ma opened the bundles, and they all enjoyed looking their fill at the pretty dress goods. I'll make your dresses as quickly as I can, girls, said Ma, because now that Pa is home, we'll all be going to Sunday school again. Where's that gray challis you got for yourself, Caroline? Pa asked her. Ma flushed pink, and her head bowed while Pa looked at her. You mean to say you didn't get it, he said. Pa flashed at him. What about that new overcoat for yourself, Charles? Pa looked uncomfortable. I know, Caroline, he said, but there won't be any crops next year and those grasshopper eggs hatch, and it's a long time till maybe I can get some work next harvest. My old coat is good enough. That's just what I thought, said Ma, smiling at him. Okay, so in the show, she bought fabric for a dress, and Mrs. Olson said all the things that Mr. Fitch said and that Nellie said, combined into a thing about you shouldn't be getting that, and she buys it anyway. And then when she gets home, she changes her mind and decides to make dresses for the girls and does a sacrifice. Whereas in this one, she wouldn't even get a dress. She was like, yeah, I'm making dresses for the girls. So we made it a whole complicated drama. Also. So Ma and Pa, much like our Christmas episode on the show, sacrificing stuff for themselves, for the girls, because they were nice. After supper, when night and lamplight came, Pa took his fiddle out of the box and tuned it lovingly. I have missed this, he said, looking around at them all. Then he began to play. He played When Johnny Comes Marching Home. When Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah. Johnny comes marching home again, hurrah, hurrah. I know that one. He played The Sweet Little Girl, the Pretty Little Girl, the Girl I Left Behind Me. Don't know that one. He played and sang My Old Kentucky Home. And he played Swanee River. I'm starting to wonder. A lot of Civil War references here. Have you noticed which songs Pa's playing? Am I to understand that the Ingalls family were from the South? Did he just like the songs? But it sounds like his family was wearing the gray, not the blue in the Civil War, because he's singing all the Johnny Reb songs. I don't know. Maybe it's true. The Southern team had the better tunes. There is that. But that says, Swanee River, Old Kentucky. Where's Pa from exactly? I'm going to have to look this up. You're making me suspicious. But then he played, and they all sang with him. Mid pleasures and palaces through we may roam, be it ever so humble, there's no place like home. Yes, there's no place like home. No place. I can't sing, but there's no place like home. Be it ever so humble, there's no place like home. And it's Laura was all about the home thing, and it's true. Now we're all home. we are totally home. And we're stuck here for a while, but it's cool. I have my home. It's very pleasant here. My husband, the cat. Oh, more. I'm gonna read this next one because this one's nice, and then it gets depressing again. So I'll read one more before everything gets depressing and terrible. So it's called Surprise. It's a good surprise. That was another mild winter without much snow. It was still grasshopper weather, but chill winds blew and the sky was gray, and the best place for little girls was in the cozy house. Pa was gone outdoors all day. He hauled logs and chopped them into wood for the stove. He followed frozen Plum Creek far upstream where nobody lived and set traps along the banks for muskrat and otter and mink. Every morning, Laura and Mary studied their books and worked sums on the slate. Every afternoon, Ma heard their lessons. She said they were good little scholars, and she was sure that when they went to school again, they would find they had kept up with their class. Every Sunday, they went to Sunday school. Laura saw Nellie Oleson showing off her fur cape. You know, I didn't have a fur cape on the show. I just like to get that out there. I had a lovely coat. I had a coat on that show. If you watched the early episodes, like the Christmas one, it was green. I had this green coat with the trim and had these like flaps, little shoulder capey things. It was like a coat mix cape kind of deal. It was gorgeous, gorgeous. But I did not have a fur cape. I had no fur cape on the show. I just want to make that clear. I got gypped on the fur cape thing. Just saying. She remembered what Nellie had said about Pa, and she burned hot inside. She knew that hot feeling was wicked. She knew she must forgive Nellie, or she would never be an angel. She thought hard about the pictures of beautiful angels in the big paper-covered Bible at home, but they wore long white nightgowns. Not one of them wore a fur cape. One happy Sunday was the Sunday when Reverend Alden came from eastern Minnesota to preach in this western church. He preached for a long time, while Laura looked at his soft blue eyes and watched his beard wagging. She hoped he would speak to her after church, and he did. "Here are my little country girls, Mary and Laura," he said. He remembered their names. Laura was wearing her new dress that day. The skirt was long enough, and the sleeves were long too. They made her coat sleeves look shorter than ever, but the red braid on the cuffs was pretty. "What a pretty new dress, Laura," the Reverend Alden said. Laura almost forgave Nellie Oleson that day. Then came Sundays when the Reverend Alden stayed at his own far church, and in Sunday school Nellie Oleson turned up her nose at Laura and flounced her shoulders under the fur cape. Flounce. Hot wickedness boiled up in Laura again. One afternoon, Ma said there would be no lessons because they must all get ready to go to town that night. Laura and Mary were astonished. "But we never go to town at night," Mary said. "There must always be a first time," said Ma. "But why must there be, Ma?" Laura asked. "Why are we going to town at night?" "It's a surprise," said Ma. "Now, no more questions. We must all take baths and be our very nicest." Again, this poor girl, like I said, she's met 11 people. And she's never been out to the store, the town, at night. She's never been to a party. She has, like, no idea what's happening. And Laura's going on about feeling wicked just because she's mad. Nellie's terrible. She's not worried about Nellie's wickedness. She's not concerned saying, wow, I feel like I'm being a terrible person, being mad. But man, that Nellie Oleson's not getting into heaven. She's terrible. No. She's just going, oh, this person is being really terrible to me, and I am understandably mad, and I must be an awful person because I don't like her. No, Nellie's being terrible to you. You are a normal person that you're mad. I mean, okay, Laura's being extra good that she's not punching her out. So that's good. She's restraining herself and not hitting her in the face, which is absolutely, that's very good. Good. That's as far as her forgiveness needs to go. But Nellie is awful. She doesn't have to be nice to Nellie. But there you go. Laura was trying so hard. I think that's what that woman, I had a woman come up to me at an autograph show, and I've talked about this before. This is absolutely true. It was the LA County Fair, and they had autograph tables. And this woman came in, and she walked right up to my table, and she looked at me, and she didn't say hello. She didn't say anything else. She didn't want an autograph. Just looked at me and said, "I forgive you," and walked out. Because she felt the same. She was furious at everything I'd ever done on the show. She was just furious, but she felt like she should forgive me. And she came all the way down to the LA County Fair, to the tent where they had the autographs, to do it. And she was so mad. She'd been holding it in for years. Of course, I mean, I didn't do any of these. I didn't do this. I was being somebody else, okay? But I didn't get a chance to try to tell her, it was a TV show. It's okay, lady. Like, chill. But she got it off her chest. She forgave Nellie Oleson. And it was a big deal. It was kind of a trip. So they're freaking out. They're going to take a bath and get dressed up and go to town. But it's dark. In the middle of the week, Ma brought in the wash tub and heated water for Mary's bath. Then again for Laura's bath, and again for Carrie's. There had never been such scrubbing and scampering, such changing to fresh drawers and petticoats, such brushing of shoes and braiding of hair and tying of hair ribbons. There had never been such a wondering. And for the record, you notice they did not all bathe in the same bath water. We hear a lot of stories about that. Oh, they filled the tub and then they all bathed in the same water. Then, yeah, maybe somebody did, but that wouldn't really be very clean or sanitary at all. And the Ingalls, who, as it's been made clear, were extraordinarily poor and didn't have any extra anything, managed to draw a completely separate tub of water and bath for every single person and bathe in clean water. They did not all bathe in each other's dirty bath water. So, yeah, so not everybody actually did that. Sniffling here. So, so everybody takes a bath. Awesome. Supper was early. After supper, Pa bathed in the bedroom, and Laura and Mary put on their new dresses. They knew better than to ask any more questions, but they wondered and whispered together. The wagon box was full of clean hay. Pa put Mary and Laura in it and wrapped blankets around them. He climbed up to the seat beside Ma and drove away toward town. The stars were small and frosty in the dark sky. The horses' feet clippity-clopped, and the wagon rattled over the hard ground. Pa heard something else. "Whoa," he said, pulling up the reins. Sam and David stopped. There was nothing but vast, dark coldness and stillness pricked by the stars. Then the stillness blossomed into the loveliest sound. 2 clear notes sounded, and sounded again and again. No one moved. Only Sam and David tinkled their bits together and breathed. Those 2 notes went on, full and loud, soft and low. They seemed to be the stars singing. Too soon, Ma murmured, "We better getting on, Charles." And the wagon rattled on. Still through its rattling, Laura could hear those swaying notes. "Oh, Pa, what is it?" she asked. And Pa said, "It's the new church bell, Laura." It was for this that Pa had worn his old patched boots. The town seemed asleep. The stores were dark as Pa drove past them. Then Laura exclaimed, "Oh, look at the church! How pretty the church is!" The church was full of light. Light spilled out of all its windows and ran out into the darkness from the door when it opened to let someone in. Laura almost jumped out from under the blankets before she remembered that she must never stand up in the wagon when the horses were going. Don't get out of the moving car. Thank you. Pa drove up to the church steps and helped them all out. He told them to go in, But they waited in the cold till he had covered Sam and David with their blankets. Then he came, and they all went into the church together. Pretty. Laura's mouth fell open, and her eyes stretched to look at what she saw. She held Mary's hand tightly, and they followed Ma and Pa. They sat down. Then Laura could look with all her might. Standing in front of the crowded benches was a tree. Laura decided it must be a tree. She could see its trunk and branches, but she had never before seen such a tree. Where leaves would be in summer, there were clusters and streamers of thin green paper. Thick among them hung little sacks made of pink mosquito bar. It's the netting there. Laura was almost sure she could see candy in them. From the branches hung packages wrapped in colored paper, red packages and pink packages and yellow packages, all tied with colored string. Silk scarves were draped among them. Red mittens hung by the cord that would go around your neck and keep them from being lost if you were wearing them. A pair of new shoes hung by their heels from a branch. Lavish strings of white popcorn were looped all over this. Ooh, popcorn. And there's picture. Grab my tray. Now, did she not know that it was Christmas? You notice she doesn't seem to know it's Christmas until 5 days before when Ma goes, it's Christmas. It's a Christmas. Boy, no calendars. She does not keep up. She's like, it's winter. Is it November? Is it December? She goes, it's winter. Oh, look, a turkey. It's Thanksgiving. And it's presents. Oh, it's December 25th already. She does not do that. She does not. And here at church, well, it's been winter for a while. Maybe it's getting close to Christmas. And that's why you'd be going to church at night. No, she didn't know. And then she says did the Ingalls not have a Christmas tree? Very, very poor. It was a big deal to even have stockings by the fire. They did not grab a shrub, and on the show they had a tree. On the show they made the little paper rings and the popcorn things. But here she's never seen one. Nope, don't know what a Christmas tree is. I don't know. Heavens. So this does sound kind of fabulous. I love the popcorn loops. You ever made those? I've made them. You made the popcorn loops for the tree with the needle and thread and the cranberries? I have done it. It was gorgeous. I hurt it was blood everywhere. I kept poking my fingers trying to get it through the pop, but it was lovely. Under the tree and leaning against all kinds of things, Laura saw a crinkly bright washboard, a wooden tub, a churn, a dasher, and a sled made of new boards, a shovel, a long-handled pitchfork. What? There's very practical gifts. Laura was too excited to speak. She squeezed Mary's hand tighter and tighter, and she looked up at Ma, wanting so much to know what that was. Ma smiled down at her and answered, "That is a Christmas tree, girls. Do you think it is pretty?" They could not answer. They nodded while they kept on looking at that wonderful tree. They were hardly even surprised to know that this was Christmas, though they had not expected Christmas yet because there was not enough snow. Just then Laura saw the most wonderful thing of all. From a far branch of that tree hung a little fur cape and a muff to match. Okay, so she literally does not know what a Christmas tree is, and she did not know that it was December 25th. She had, no idea. So no calendars. No, her mother doesn't mention, oh, by the way, it's getting close. Nothing. She just, it's cold. I guess it's winter. Now, I know they were really poor, but, it's the 1870s. Christmas trees were already a popular thing. People had Christmas trees. Clearly, even this church, which is not a wealthy church at all, they've got a perfectly good tree. I'm sure the Olesons had a tree. People had trees. Her mother knew what a tree was. Her mother's family, remember in the first book, they all had very fancy dresses. They probably had trees. Yet somehow Laura's just nobody's mentioned Christmas trees. Seems odd somehow. I think she's laying it. I think that Laura, the writer, is laying it on a little thing. I think she knew what a Christmas tree was. She's a big girl. She's not baby Carrie's age. I think she'd heard of them. Her mother probably mentioned, we used to have really big Christmas trees. They lived in the big woods with all the pine trees. Somebody put up a pine tree and hung something on it. I think she's just going, I never saw one before. It was amazing. I think it's poetic license. I think that's what it is. Poetic license. The Reverend Alden was there. He preached about Christmas, but Laura was looking at that tree. She could not hear what he said. Everyone stood up to sing, and Laura stood up, but she could not sing. Not a sound would come out of her throat. In the whole world, there couldn't be a store so wonderful as to look at as that tree. After the singing, Mr. Tower and Mr. Beetle. Now, we're not hearing about a Miss Beetle. There's a Mr. Beetle. There's a Beetle family. We're not really hearing much about Miss Beetle. Began taking things off of it and reading out names. Mrs. Tower, yeah, that annoying Sunday school teacher, and Miss Beadle, there she is, there's Miss Beadle, brought those things down past the benches and gave them to the person whose name was on them. Everything on that tree was a Christmas present for somebody. When Laura knew that, the lamps and people and voices and even the tree began to whirl. They whirled faster, noisier, more excited. Okay, so she's having another one of her anxiety attacks. She's described this before where she gets the spins and gets hot and cold. And she very accurately describes having a total meltdown anxiety attack. So Laura's freaking out and going to faint because there's a Christmas tree. The room is spinning. Someone gave her a pink mosquito bar bag. It did have candy in it and a big popcorn ball. Mary had one too. So did Carrie. Every girl and boy had one. Then Mary had a pair of blue mittens and Laura had a red pair. Ma opened a big package, and there was a warm, big, brown and red plaid shawl for her. Pa got a woolly muffler. Then Carrie had a rag doll with a china head. She screamed for joy. Through the laughing and talking and rustling of papers, Mr. Beadle and Mr. Tower went on shouting names. The little fur cape and muff still hung in the tree, and Laura wanted them. She wanted to look at them as long as she could. She wanted to know who got them. They could not be for Nellie Oleson, who already had a fur cape. Laura did not expect anything more, but to Mary came a pretty little booklet with Bible pictures in it from Mrs. Tower. Mr. Tower was taking the little fur cape and the muff from the tree. He read a name, but Laura could not hear it through all the joyful noise. She lost sight of the cape and the muff among all the people. They were gone now. Then, to Carrie came a cunning little brown spotted white china dog. Cunning, you say. It's a cunning little dog. It's so cute. A cunning little dog. But Carrie's arms and her eyes were full of her doll, so Laura held and stroked and laughed over the sleek little dog. "Merry Christmas, Laura," Miss Beadle said, and in Laura's hand she put a beautiful little box. It was made of snow-white gleaming china. On its top stood a wee gold-colored teapot, and a gold-colored tiny cup in a gold-colored saucer. Oh, that's adorable. The top of the box lifted off. Inside was a nice place to keep a breastpin. If someday Laura had a breastpin, Ma said it was a jewel box. Now again, we're getting callbacks to the show. Remember the music box thing? And I had the music box, and it was a little white box with a little gold thing on top. Things like that. The fur cape. Remember, she did get a fur cape at Christmas in the show. Her pa, who went shot a rabbit, he made her a fur cape. And so there's a lot of things sort of happening, but not exactly the same. There had never been such a Christmas as this. It was such a large, rich Christmas. The whole church full of Christmas. There were so many lamps, so many people, so much noise and laughter, and so many happinesses in it. Laura felt full and bursting, as if in that whole big, rich Christmas were inside her, and her mittens, and her beautiful jewelry box with a wee gold cup and saucer and teapot, and her candy, and her popcorn ball. And suddenly someone said, "These are for you, Laura." Mrs. Tower stood smiling, holding out the little fur cape and muff. "For me?" Laura said. "For me?" Then everything else vanished, while with both arms she hugged the soft furs to her. She got the fur cape. She got the fur cape. Yes. She hugged them tighter and tighter, trying to believe they were really hers, the silky, soft little brown fur cape and the muff. All around her Christmas went on, but Laura knew only the softness of those furs. People were going home. Carrie was standing on the bench while Ma fastened her coat and tied her hood more strongly. Ma was saying, "Thank you so much for the shawl, Brother Alden. It is just what I needed." Pa said, "And I thank you for the muffler. It will feel good when I come to town in the cold." The Reverend Alden sat down on the bench and asked, "And does Mary's coat fit?" Laura had not noticed Mary's coat until then. Mary had on a new, dark blue coat. It was long, and its sleeves came down to Mary's wrists. Mary buttoned it up, and it fitted. "And how does this little girl like her furs?" the Reverend Alden smiled. He drew Laura between his knees. He laid the fur cape around her shoulders and fastened it at the throat. He put the cord of the muff around her neck, and her hands went inside the silky muff. "There," the Reverend Alden said. "Now my little country girls will be warm when they come to Sunday school." "What do you say, Laura?" Ma asked. But the Reverend Alden said, "There is no need. The way her eyes are shining is enough." Laura could not speak. The golden brown fur cuddled her neck and softly hugged her shoulders. Down her front it hid the threadbare fastenings of her coat. The muff came up far up her wrists and hid the shortness of her coat sleeves. "She's a little brown bird with red trimmings," the Reverend Alden said. Then Laura laughed. It was true. Her hair and her coat and her dress and the wonderful furs were brown. Her hood and mittens and the braid on her dress were red. "I'll tell my church people back east about our little brown bird," said the Reverend Alden. "You see, when I told them about our church out here, they said they must send a box for the Christmas tree. They all gave things they had. The little girls who sent you your furs and Mary's coat needed larger ones." Uh-oh. Okay, you realize what he just said, and that's why this did not happen on the show. It's not happen on the show. The Ingalls on our TV show did not take charity. Remember on the Waltons, it was the poor kids getting the gifts, and Mary Ellen was helping the little kids come up with Bible say, but like the Waltons were like, "We don't need charity, don't take anything." So the Ingalls did not get charity. The Ingalls, Pa made her a fur cape. They went to the mercantile and traded things for the stove and whatnot, that kind of stuff. But they didn't receive alms for the poor. The Ingalls would not have gone to a charity missionary Christmas where the poor people living in the hinterlands were given stuff, even after a plague of locusts. But what's described here is that back east, some people who were not hit by the locust plague and had, well, money for fur capes, gave their hand-me-downs. They said, somebody else, this is not a new fur cape, a little girl had that cape and muff and grew out of it. A bunch of people donated their used items to be shipped out to the poor people in Walnut Grove, Minnesota, that they saw them as so desperately in need, they took up a collection of clothing and items to be taken to them as gifts. Now, they may have done it because the locust, they may have been told about the locust thing, that everyone had lost their crops and was devastated financially by the locust plague, and they sent stuff. But this was a charity party where he was handing out used items to poor and desperate people. And Laura's going, "Oh, I got a fur cape." And as we know on the show, Paul would have gone, "Nuh-uh, no, we're not doing that." But it may have been a disaster relief fund. That's what I'm thinking, that they took up a disaster relief thing because the locusts had so devastated the town. But it was charity, which on the show would have been like, no, that's totally not happening. But he's going back to tell them, yes, the poor people got your gifts. "Oh, thank you, sir," said Laura. "And please, sir, tell them thank you, too." For what could she speak? For when she could speak, her manners were as nice as Mary's. Then they all said good night and Merry Christmas to the Reverend Alden. Mary was so beautiful in her Christmas coat. Carrie was so pretty on Pa's arm. Pa and Ma were smiling so happily, and Laura was all gladness. Mr. and Mrs. Oleson were going home, too. Mr. Olson's arms were full of things, and so were Nellie and Willie's. They were taking some of the items from the disaster relief party. I didn't know about that. No wickedness boiled up in Laura now. She only felt a little bit of mean gladness. "Merry Christmas, Nellie," Laura said. Nellie stared while Laura walked quietly on with her hands snuggled deep in the soft muff. Her cape was prettier than Nellie's, and Nellie had no muff. So Laura kind of showed off there. She was like, I got the little stuff. You just got the cape. She didn't get the accessory set. Although I'm kind of wondering, I guess it had to be disaster relief, because why would the Olsons, why would Nellie and Willie be taking stuff at the church charity party unless it was totally for locust disaster relief? Crazy. Oh, someone's saying, "Oh, yeah, yes, that is true." Roger Lee McBride, who then would have been Rose's heir. Laura left everything to Rose, her daughter, and she left it to her friend Roger. And he was the one who was in charge when the show got made. And that makes sense. The non-charity elements of... And I think, too, that it was sort of a sense in 1974, when we're doing the show, and Michael Land and everyone, that the idea that the Ingalls were taking charity, that it seemed more, they were doing we'll get by Caroline by themselves. Also, I don't know that we didn't really do the Locust episode right before the Christmas episode, so that wouldn't we wouldn't have had the explanation of that it was locust disaster relief. So that makes sense. And Rose was very harumph about people taking charity. And it's actually interesting that Laura even included this in here. So there is more. The grasshoppers are bad. No, more terrible things happen. So then there's going to be grasshoppers walking and wheels of fire. Yeah, that's bad. So it's coming along, and then we're coming down the home stretch. Now it's interesting because they're not very long. I remember she was really little. They're still talking about her being like 8, and then by the end of the book, she's like a big girl. And it's like, wait, you were there like 2 years. So how the timelines and Laura's age is like it's all over the place. And some historians have mentioned like the Kansas stuff when they're Little House on the Prairie. They said, yeah, that doesn't totally work because she was like 2. So they went to Kansas and they left, and then they went back. Then they were in Kansas like twice, and they went to a bunch of places. The timeline of they left Pep in Wisconsin and went here and went here and went here in the books is changed. They don't go to all the same places at the same time that they actually did in real life. Because it was very complicated. They went some places twice, and they went someplace and turned right around and went back to craziness. And that would have been weird. And so in the book, she goes, okay, we went here, we went here, we went here. But that meant she had stories from when she was 8 that she's talking about being in a place where she was actually only 2. So no, that wouldn't have happened. And it gets really complicated. A lot of people today were just talking about like, wait, baby Carrie. So baby Carrie was born, but then baby Grace. But yeah, there's a lot of that of baby Carrie. When was she born, and was she alive here, and then how old was she, and then wait, Grace was born. So there's a lot of the babies get moved around. It gets a little nutty. So if you're trying to follow the actual historical timeline and how old is Laura really at any point in these stories, it gets very murky. And it's a little vague on the show. In real life on the show, I was just turning 12 and Melissa Gilbert was just turning 10. So I was actually 2 years older. And then Melissa Sue was in between. Whereas in the books, it's made clear that Laura and Nellie are very close in age. And Mary's much older. But in real life, in the show, the actresses of Laura and that played Laura and Mary were much closer in age than Laura and Mary in real life or in the books. And Nellie was actually older than Mary. So, woo! Exactly. So, there's the TV timeline, the TV age line, the book timeline, the book age line, and then actual reality. So, yeah, good luck with that one. You drive yourself mad. You drive yourself mad with this thing. But it's still fun. So tomorrow is going to be depressing chapters where bad things happen to the Ingalls again, but they get by. They get by somehow. They manage. Pa says all's well that ends well, and Ma makes some more cornbread, and they live happily ever after. But it will get rough tomorrow. Orange juice. And as I said, Saturday I'm going to get this show on a road over here in the other part of the living room. And bonnets. Yep, there's like another box on the way. So eventually you will go to, I got to get some out, and then you'll go to the store and you'll see, oh, look, it says in stock, and you'll probably buy all those in like 10 seconds, and what can I do? But yay. And this is a particularly nice one. Yes, it is purple. It's a little tiny purple flower, so I like that. The hair color's holding up. I kind of like it. I kind of like the hair color. It's looking good. The new hair color is good. Came out of a box, but it looks nice. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. So take care, get some rest, make some cornbread, wash your hands, and hang in there. See you tomorrow.